All right, guys. So I recorded this on Friday, April 8th. And there were a couple of things that I talked about in this podcast that actually happened while I was recording. So I got finished recording and I saw news of both of them, and they're both KU basketball things. So Latrell Giselle did end up entering into the transfer portal, and Ochai Agbaji did end up declaring for the NBA draft. So when you hear those parts, you'll probably think it's a little bit late, but I did record this a little bit before that happened. So I wanted to give this disclaimer before I got into the episode. So you guys knew that I did know that happened and you didn't think that the episode was dated or anything like that. So just wanted to give that quick disclaimer, but now we'll go ahead and get into the episode. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Something About Sports podcast. I'm your host, Leon Edwards. This is going to be episode 4.5. So I'm going to talk about my local teams and just some different things that are going on. I guess one quick thing I want to bring up is that I said I wasn't going to have an episode devoted to KU basketball again, probably for a while, but I didn't know so much was going to happen between the end of the season and now. And it's only been a couple of weeks and so much has happened. So if I do go long-winded, it's just because I'm passionate about KU basketball. So don't fault me for that. But I do want to touch on a couple things for the Chiefs and then recap the first week of the Royals season. And then that'll be what I want to do in this podcast. And then we'll move to episode 5 for some more national things and different stuff like that. So I'm happy to have you guys with me again today. Just continue to support Instagram page, SA Sports _podcast. I'm on YouTube at SA Sports as well, or you can find it under Something About Sports podcast and then on all the podcasting platforms. I don't really have any ratings right now. So people that are listening to this regularly, please go give me 5 stars or however many stars you think I deserve. I'd much rather prefer to just have that feedback out there. Leave a comment if you want to, and then engage on the Instagram page as well. I ask questions on there, post up different things on there. So definitely don't hesitate to go engage with that. I'm going to keep trying to get better at ways to engage with the audience and keep the audience engaged outside of just listening to me talk all the time. I will continue to do that, continue to try to find those new ways. And I just want you guys to hang in there with me and keep supporting. And I really appreciate it. Without further ado, because I don't want to make this episode too long, and that's not a promise, it's just a want. So we'll see how it goes as the episode goes. But I do want to hop right into talking about stuff. Since I've been doing a lot of college basketball talk lately, I'll save KU for last. And then we'll start with the Chiefs. We'll move to the Royals, and then I'll talk about KU basketball a little bit. I haven't looked at football as much. I do know there's a lot of young guys on KU's football team. I will do some KU football coverage at some point through this offseason. I know spring ball just started, but I'll have some catching up to do. I literally have been trying to catch up and consume as much baseball content as possible so I could be ready for the season and ready for what to watch for in this season. You guys will kind of come to realize that with me just being one person and having a lot of different things I want to cover, there will be some things that I slack on. KU football is going to be one of them, not because I don't love KU football, but because they don't excite me as much as maybe some other things that I'm interested in right now. And also, just with so much other stuff going on, other sports in full swing, I want to be able to also touch on those. So the bulk of KU football stuff will probably come closer to the season, around just college football season in general, when I talk about everybody. And then I'll have my 0.5 episodes where I talk about KU football and games and different things like that. For those of you that were wondering, or I know not a lot of people may be, but for those of you that are wondering if I'll do some KU football stuff, it will come down the road. I will talk about some KU football stuff. I'm just still in basketball mode, still in Chiefs mode a little bit. That's where I want to be now. And then, of course, baseball mode. I'm in baseball mode probably more than any other sport right now because it's new and I want to be on top of stuff that's going on and be able to follow those stories through the season. That's why I'm not really into the to KU football yet, but that's coming. So just hang in there for those of you that want to hear. That's definitely coming down the road. Let me hop into the Chiefs first. And there's not a whole lot of Chiefs news. There's a funny story I wanted to talk about, and then the Austin Blythe signing, Michael Burton, and then just evaluating kind of the offseason to this point. That shouldn't be too long. The Chiefs have been a little bit quieter. Shouldn't take too long. But the funny story I wanted to talk about was a story that Juju Smith-Schuster actually just shared on Michael Irvin's podcast, talking about how Andy Reid was recruiting him. And I thought that was pretty funny. He said that Andy Reid was just constantly texting him pictures of the Lombardi Trophy. And I thought that was super funny, and it sounds so Andy Reid. I think that's what made it what made it even better was that it just sounds so much like an Andy Reid type of thing to do. He doesn't seem like a big talker, a big bragger or anything like that. But just saying, hey, we got one of these over here, almost got another one, and we're trying to get even more of them, and we plan to have more to come. He said a lot to Juju without saying a lot, but I don't think we really ever had a chance of keeping Juju if the Steelers were going to be competitive. He wants to be a number one guy. That's kind of what I took away from this offseason, and he didn't want to come and be automatically the third option in the Chiefs offense. It's kind of what be the only reason why I could see him not coming to the Chiefs over staying in Pittsburgh. And then also the money thing. You know, he wants to be a number one guy and get paid like a number one guy, and there's a lot of money coming into the market next offseason as well. I'm sure that also played a factor into it. I am one of the people in the minority, from what it seems like, that would have loved to have Juju Smith-Schuster on the Chiefs, but we don't get to see it now. Maybe next year, maybe not. We'll see, but I thought that was a funny story about Andy Reid and him sending pictures of the Lombardi Trophy. I thought that was pretty cool and like a weird kind of flex, but also cool for him to be recruiting guys like that may want to win a championship. So we know it didn't work for Juju, but it may work for somebody else. And then the next thing I want to hop into are the two signings, the two major more signings since the last time I did one, since episode 3.5. Austin Blythe, but the bigger one, of course. I think he's going to be the center. I think we were all kind of betting on Allegretti being the center and just plugging in there, but I think Allegretti's just going to be a depth piece. I think Austin Blythe's going to be the center. I think last season was his first year starting a full 16 games because of injury at center. He actually had been playing guard, but with how much the Chiefs have bolstered the guard position already, I don't really see him playing guard in this offense next year if they want to have him on the field as a starter. So I think if he's going to be on the field as a starter, he's going to be a center. I think he looked pretty good. I think it was a cool perspective he could share on going against Jarran Reed. Those two have played against one another, and they both have a lot of respect for each other playing in that same division. The NFC West, I believe, is that division with Seattle and the Rams and the Niners. I thought that was cool that they had that perspective of kind of playing against each other and signed around the same time. But yeah, he's played right guard in the NFL. Center is his most recent position. So I think that'll be a good place to put him at center and then bolster that interior offensive line even more. There's still question marks about the tackles. I think that's going to at least go through June 1st and see who gets cut, who's available after camp, different things like that. So I do think that, and then the draft, of course, as well. I'm pretty sure the Chiefs will draft a tackle early. The question marks at tackle, I don't think are going to get removed that fast. I feel like Alejandro Villanueva and Russell Okung probably are still options, but I still only see those guys as probably more stopgap options than like long-term solutions or somebody you will want to bet the bank on. I do see them as potential options. I see that they could step in and play next year at the left tackle spot, but you also want to still have that insurance. I don't really have a full kind of knowledge on what I think will happen, but I do know that there will be some upgrades there. The interior offensive line for the Chiefs is looking amazing. I think that's going to help the running game tremendously. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire will be helped out a lot by that. You got Tooney, you got Long, you got Blythe up the middle, or Laurent Duvernay-Tardif if LDT comes back. You have him as well in the mix in interior. I think that's a really good start. We just can see where the Chiefs want to go from there at the position. The Chiefs still have a decent amount of money to spend, and I know there are still some guys out there that the Chiefs had looked at, Melvin Ingram being one of them, but they've got like $20 more million to spend on a free agent and then, of course, the draft class. So we'll see what that does and where that money ends up going. But I'm excited to kind of see, and maybe they're waiting to see how they can fill out the offensive line, and then they end up giving the extensions out to Tyreek Hill and Tyrann Mathieu. Neither one of those guys seem willing to take a pay cut, but maybe they just go ahead and extend them out at least and get them more money later on down the road so we can make sure we keep them here in town. So that's also an option of something that we could see happen towards the end of the offseason as well. But you got to get through camp. You got to get through people getting cut and going and finding the guys you think can help you out from that market as well. And then the Chiefs also did go out and grab a fullback. They replaced Anthony Sherman with Michael Burton, who played for the Saints most recently. He seems like he's willing to come in and just take on that Anthony Sherman role, be a special teamer, and play sparingly offensively how Anthony Sherman was. So I think that just proves to you that position is a little bit more important in the Chiefs offense than maybe we even let on before. But Andy Reid values that position, and Even though it's dying out across the full NFL, the Chiefs still value that position to go out and find somebody who's proven that they can play. And he's going to be probably a piece who's a valuable special teams guy. He's going to be valuable in short yardage situations. He probably is going to have some gadget plays where he's involved, and you'll probably see him out there. So not a big splash signing, not somebody whose name you're going to hear all the time. But I think it just speaks more to the philosophy of the Chiefs and Andy Reid in this offense, this kind of West Coast type of offense where he likes to have a fullback that he can count on when he needs one. So I think that's the biggest thing to take away from that signing. As far as other things on the Chiefs front, I talked a little bit about the tackle position. That was one thing that I wanted to do. The Austin Blythe thing led me into that. I think just overall in free agency, I think some fans are being a little bit more critical than they probably need to be. Of course, they haven't gotten the big splash guys. They haven't gotten a whole bunch of huge signings, but they've also seemed like they, other than the Trent Williams, which we went after hard and we were going to overpay for him, and then, of course, Joe Thuney, who we ended up getting, they don't seem willing to overpay. So I know Melvin Ingram was in the building. He's still out on the market. So that kind of says to me that he may be asking for more than any team is willing to offer him that's interested, because he's still out there and he's a really good player, a Pro Bowl caliber player when he's healthy. We can still see him end up back in the building. We don't know what Brett Veach has up his sleeve to do with that remaining $20 million in cap space. I think he'll use it. Do I think that he anticipated having that left? Probably not. I think that they really thought that they had a legit shot at Trent Williams. And looking back on that, I don't know if we ever did really. I think he just was using the Chiefs to drive his price up from the 49ers, but I think he was always going to stay there either way. But I think that the Chiefs really thought we had a legit shot at him. We cleared a lot of space for him. But my biggest thing is just the effort. I'm just happy to see the Chiefs put it in the effort to go get people. The Chiefs' names are in the hat for a lot of guys at a lot of positions of need. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that whether you're happy with the people that we got or not, you have to be happy with the effort. Brett Veach is proving that he's not going to be complacent. He's not going to just let the team have needs and not address them. Some people think he's overly aggressive in addressing the needs sometimes. I don't know if I'm in that camp. I think he's just doing what any team within a Super Bowl window should do, and that's go after it. And he's going after it, and I love to see it. I love to see my team in that position. So for those of you that are not as high on the offseason, I say just let it play out. See what all we do. You never know. Every trade doesn't happen where it's a name that's swirling around for months and months. So it may not be. I don't think we get Orlando Brown. I don't think the Ravens trade him to us for anything less than Patrick Mahomes or something close to it. They're not going to make our team better. They're going to gut us somehow. So I don't think we end up making a trade for him. But that's not to say we don't go out and get another tackle. We don't go out and trade for somebody else that's name isn't out there as a trade chip. You never know what they have up their sleeve. So I say let the offseason play out. Let's get through camp. Let's see what the Chiefs do to bolster the offensive line. Let's see what the Chiefs do to bolster the defense. Damian Wilson didn't end up signing with Jacksonville, so that leaves a little open hole at the linebacker position. I bet we probably end up drafting one. This is a deeper class. I bet we probably end up drafting one, but there may be one out there we go get. And of course, that's also operating under the assumption that Willie Gay comes back healthy and starts picking up on his improvement where he left off last season. That's also assuming that. So we'll see how the linebacker position plays out. The Chiefs can still do well to bolster the cornerback position. I wouldn't be surprised to see Steven Nelson come back to Kansas City. I know he just got cut by Pittsburgh, and he had some choice things to say about him. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him come back for the right price. You just don't really know what all's going to happen. Let the offseason play out. Let's see where Brett Veach ends up putting that $20 million to. And what we end up looking like overall as a team. I bet when it's all said and done, we're still going to be one of the better teams top to bottom in the NFL, and probably one of the top one or the number one or at the lowest two in the AFC. That's just kind of part of having Patrick Mahomes on the team, having Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. You kind of can fill it out with just good people, and you still have a top team. And that's not even really including guys like Chris Jones and Tyrann Mathieu on the defensive side of the ball. And now you're including Jarran Reed in there as well, who's a top-tier talent at his position. The Chiefs are going to have talent. They're going to have a good-looking team, still going to be one of the more talented teams in the NFL. I say just give Brett Veach a chance to fill out the roster, give him a chance to get the draft done, and I think we'll be happy with what the result is. He's proven that he's going to do what he can to put a winning team on the field. He hasn't given me a reason to doubt that yet. So I'll let it play out. I think everybody in Chiefs Kingdom should let it play out, and we just see what he does with it. All right, next I want to hop into talking about the Royals in their first week. I don't think anyone knows what to make of this team yet. I do think they'll be better than they've been the last 2 years. I think it will be hard not to. And I guess 3 years. 2018 was horrible. So I guess the last 3 seasons, I think they'll be better than that. I don't know how you don't be better. You're not better than that. And with the improvements that you have on the roster, with the signings you went out and made, I do think the Royals will be better than they've been the last few years. I don't know if they'll compete for a division title this year or anything like that. But under the right circumstances, I can see them maybe fighting for a wild card spot if getting fans back into Kauffman propels them to winning more games at home and at least having a winning record at home. And then you try to go 500 or not far under that on the road. That usually puts you at least in position to try to compete for a playoff spot. I don't know how much optimism I have that happens, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think this team has some talent, and we're yet to see Mondesi play this year. We don't know if he's going to take a step forward or not. I think he's going to be big for the lineup. Dozier missed a couple games with his injury as well that he sustained. I think that was opening day. But overall, I'm excited to watch this team. I think after the first week, today makes 7 days, the first week of the season, they've played 5 games. I believe the Royals are 3-2, 1 loss in each series. I think the things that stand out to me so far is that our starting pitching has been subpar. Danny Duffy and Jacob Junis look good against the Indians, but that lineup really isn't that good. The game that we lost that Jacob Junis started, he was insanely good in the game, but their lineup didn't make it that hard on him. I think he started the 4th inning with 39 pitches or something crazy like that. So they didn't make it too hard on him. They didn't make him work that hard. And that's not to take anything away from that. I've always liked Junis's talent. I've always liked his stuff. I think he'll be a good bullpen piece. I don't know if he's a starter yet. I don't know if he is a starter still. I think he was put there out of necessity the last few years where he was there. And that just has evidence in how bad our pitching had been. And this year, we don't really know what to make of the rotation, the starter rotation at least. I don't really know what to make of the starter rotation. I don't think they've looked that good to me personally, though. Brad Keller's supposed to be the ace. His first outing was a disaster. I think he ended up getting left in too long, and that's why the Royals had to score 14 runs. Singer, I didn't really think he looked that good either in his start. So it was kind of weird to see Danny Duffy and Junis, the guys who it seems like they're not expecting a whole lot out of, be the guys who had good outing. Yeah, I think that's the toughest part of it is that starting pitching. The bullpen's supposed to be the strength. They did basically give up both of the games. They did lose. They gave up two-run home runs to Jose Ramirez, and that was the difference in the game. So I don't know, what to make of the bullpen. I do still think that the Royals bullpen is going to be good. It's probably just more about some of the guys, like a Greg Holland. And it pains me to say because I loved Holland when he was here during the whole HDH era and all of that, but it just doesn't look like he has it anymore in those high leverage situations. I think early in the season, Matheny, he's going to fill it out with some of these guys out of the bullpen, but he knows he has some guys that can go. And I think he's going to fill out some of these guys who he's not sure about right now and see what he can get out of them and see where he can slot them in or what situations he can use them in. So I think that's the biggest thing right now is what he's trying to figure out. But I anticipate Greg Holland maybe not being a part of this pitching staff by the end of the season. So unless he turns things around, but I haven't really seen it so far to come out and start the 8th inning with a 4-pitch walk. You can't do that out of the bullpen with Jose Ramirez coming up. And not only that, but he walked the leadoff hitter. So you have situations like that where the bullpen's puzzling and the team as a whole is puzzling. I think they started off like a wildfire against Texas, which probably had a little bit to do with their pitching as well. But what's going to be with Salvi? Carlos Santana's looking like he's transformed him in just a few months. I'm laughing about that because we're going to talk in a month and Salvi's going to be striking out every other at-bat again. But it's just cool to see him already have as many walks as he had all the last season. I think that's pretty cool. So just stuff like that. Salvi's going to be Salvi. He's going to be solid. Michael A. Taylor looks like a good addition. Of course, he's not going to scare too many people out of the 9 spot, but he can get hot. He can make those runs. I think the issue is going to be like Nicky Lopez and Kyle Isbell down there, which, of course, we don't really know what it's all going to look like when Mondesi does finally make his way back to the lineup. I think that'll change a lot about what's going on. I really like Kyle Isbell, at least as a hitter. He showed a lot of patience. This is somebody who we heard buzz about last year, And now this year again, he's on the opening day roster. Of course, a lot of people are assuming that's out of necessity because of that Mondesi injury, but I'd like to see him get a longer look. I haven't really seen him show anything that doesn't warrant that at this point. You get Dozier going, you get Soler hitting home runs. I think you can do some damage offensively, but the pitching is going to have to show up because the offense is not going to be able to score 6 to 8 runs a game. It's just not feasible in baseball, especially in a game like the other night where you're going against Bieber. The Royals got the Salvi home run and put them up 1-0 in a pitcher's duel, which 1-0 in that game seemed like a lot. And then you give up the Jose Ramirez homer, and then you tie it up and you give up another Jose Ramirez homer from your bullpen. So you're going to have those situations that the offense just isn't going to score even 5 runs a lot of those times. But the pitching's going to have to pick them up. The offense picked up the pitching in that first 2 games insanely well, but they're not going to do that every night. And so you got to have the balance with the pitching. I think we're probably still a year or 2 away from having that, from being able to field at least a pitching rotation that's good enough to support the offense that I think the Royals are building. I do the bullpen, though. I think the bullpen has great potential. I think the Royals bullpen will be pretty good once everything's figured out for situations and different things like that. I actually thought Wade Davis looked pretty good, too, the times I've watched. As far as overall with the Royals, not a bad start, not a great start, just okay start. You got Whit Merrifield being Whit. I think that this is the season where you have to figure out what you're going to do if you're the Royals. If you think you're going to be a contending team this year or next, then you probably keep Whit in the building. I don't really anticipate that, and I think if it looks that way, you got to trade him. He's just getting better and better. His value's rising. I think he's probably one of the better trade chips out there. I know Soler's name is out there a lot because people love home runs, but Whit can give you power. He can give you hitting for average, but then he also can play everywhere. Soler, he really can't even play the field. He's not a really good defender at all. You can put him in the outfield, but he's not going to make any plays for you. I would take Whit Merrifield 8 times out of 10 probably in today's baseball world over a Soler type of player, but that's also just because I love that type of baseball. It's a little bit biased in that there's going to be a lot of people who will take Soler in that situation, and you can't fault them for that. But I just like Whit a lot. And I think you have to cash in on that asset now from what you got for him. I'm pretty sure he was like a Rule 5 guy. You really didn't give up anything for him. You got to strike on that. You have to cash that in. If you don't think you're going to go all in and try to contend this year or next, Whit Merrifield shouldn't be on the team by the end of this season. I think it just has to be that way. It's going to suck to see him go because he's been one of the only bright spots for this team for the last few years. But you just can't keep holding on to him with his value rising and the value of players like him rising and on a team that you don't really need him at this point, especially where they seem like they are going to want to play him at second base. And when you get Mondesi back, you still have Isbel in the mix. You have Nicky Lopez in the mix, which I think Nicky Lopez just ends up going back down to Omaha. But you still have Isbel, who I think should stick around. And then you got Mondesi, Isbel, and you got Merrifield in that whole situation. I think the organization deserves itself to give Isbel a look and see what you can get out of him going forward. Those are just some of my thoughts from the first week of the Royals. I have enjoyed watching baseball again. I've enjoyed it for sure. I've enjoyed seeing the Royals. I've enjoyed hearing the fans back at Kauffman. I thought that was cool. I thought Alex Gordon coming back to throw the first pitch on opening day was awesome. So I'm excited for the Royals. I'm excited to watch how this team develops, but I do think that there's still some work to do with the roster, and if that doesn't prove to be done this season, you're probably going to see Whit out the door. You probably see Soler out the door. And I think that's okay. You may even see Carlos Santana out the door, and that's okay too. There are going to be teams calling about those players, and then you just get your young guys in there and then figure out where you go from there. But I just don't think you hold on to those assets if you don't think you're going to be winning soon. And from the look of it, I think the offense can get there this season. It's going to be about getting guys like Dozier going, getting Mondesi back, and if he takes another step, and then having guys like Isbel, if this is real or somewhat real, you have a guy like him, Michael A. Taylor being okay. He's probably going to end up into the lineup, probably even more like a 9 guy when everybody's back. Santana, he's going to take a lot of walks. If Salvi continues his streak, I say all that to say I can see a path where the offense is good this year. But it's going to be about the pitching. It's going to be about the rotation. And then if the bullpen lives up to what we think it can. So Excited about the Royals, ready to watch it, ready to see how the season develops. And I have a lot more to come on them. I have a lot more that I want to share on them, and I'll just continue to cover them throughout the season. Lastly, for this episode, I want to talk about KU basketball a little bit and some different things that have been going on. There's been a lot going on, even since I recorded the last one, which was the recap of the KU USC. There has been a whole lot that's going on in KU sports overall, but also in KU basketball with the transfers that we've been getting, seeing guys go elsewhere, seeing guys leave the program. It's just been almost like a total overhaul of the lower guys on the roster. You already have Tyon Grant-Foster, Tristan Enaruna, and Jethro Muscadin all leaving the program. I do think in my last episode in the 3.5, I do think I talked about potentially seeing Tyon Grant-Foster and Tristan Enaruna leave the program. Neither one of those were shockers. I was a little bit surprised about Jethro Muscadin. I thought he had some potential. I could see him going to a really small school and being really good. And that's not to say I don't see Enaruna being good. I think Enaruna probably, from a standpoint of fitting in, I thought he was on the path to being good this past season. He just didn't play enough. And then Tyon Grant-Foster, he's going to go somewhere that's going to give him the green light to score. That's what his game is predicated on. And I want to see him flourish. He is from Kansas City, Kansas, where I'm from. I want to see him flourish. I would have loved to see him do it at KU, but he was already a JUCO guy. His time is ticking, so he's got to go somewhere else and be able to play right away if he's got some pro dreams. And you can't fault a guy for that. You've seen those guys leave. And you've seen those spots fill fairly quickly already with transfer guys coming in. And then, of course, Bobby Pettiford as well. I wasn't too familiar with Bobby Pettiford. I saw his name coming up a lot. He's been shooting up the boards or whatever as a prospect. Yeah, he's been shooting up the board as a prospect. And I did look into him. He's a shorter guy, but he's really good. He can jump. He's really strong. I guess he reminds you a little bit of a Frank Mason. I think he can jump a little bit higher though than Frank Mason. And Frank Mason, he was pretty athletic in his own right, but Bobby Pettiford, he can dunk on people. I think Bill Self meant what he said after the game, that they had to get more athletic. You got to get longer. You got to get more guys that can go get a bucket, and he's doing that. He's continued to add guys like that. You got Bobby Pettiford coming in the building, and then you also got a transfer from Missouri Southern State, Cam Martin. He's coming from Jeff Boshy's program. 6'9" guy. I think he averaged 20 plus. Really good three-point shooter. I think that'll translate well to KU. I think he'll be a good shooter here. I think there was a game for Missouri Southern State that he made 9 of 10 threes in. So that just lets you know his potential as a shooter. I think he's got a lot of potential to come in and be a contributor for KU. So he's also good. That was another good pickup along with everybody else that KU already has in the class. And then you went out and got a Joseph Yesufu from Drake as well. And those of you guys that didn't remember him, he was the guy who was keeping our hope alive for Drake to beat USC in that round of 64 game. For those of us that kind of knew what happened when KU played against USC, even though I tried to deny it later and pick KU to win, we all knew what was going to happen in that game. We didn't know they would lose by that many, but we knew they would lose. They just weren't a good matchup. But anyway, Joseph Yesufu went out and he scored 28 against USC, and he had one of the better plays of the tournament with his dunk against Wichita State in the first four. Athletic dude. He is a shorter guy, but it's something about Bill Self and these short guards. He knows how to get something out of them. He seems very excited to come to KU from everything that I've read, and I'm excited to have him. Another cool thing about him is that he'll have 3 years of eligibility left because he was a sophomore last year, and of course last year doesn't count for anybody. So that's another win. You almost got another part of your recruiting class. You got 3 years out of him. You do only get 1 year from Cam Martin, but then you got Bobby Pettiford, who also you get at least 4 years out of if he sticks around and doesn't go to the NBA or transfer or anything like that. But either way, you get picking up some really solid guys to replace the guys that are leaving the program. I know there's been a lot of talk about Christian Bishop coming to KU as well. He's from Creighton. He actually was a thorn in KU side when KU played against Creighton, if anybody remembers that. He gave KU fits in that game. And he's a Lee Summit kid. He went into the transfer portal from Creighton, and the first thing I saw was that he wanted to play at KU. So KU did extend a scholarship. The scholarships are full right now, so I think he will end up at KU, but I think there's more moves to come with the current roster, whether that be Latrell Jostle going into the transfer portal, which I could see happening now that you end up with another top tier freshman guard coming in. You got another guy who's already proven at the college level. He's automatically going to step into the depth chart over Latrell. I can see Latrell going somewhere else, even though I really like his potential as a shooter. I think every time he came in the game, he proved that, like, he didn't belong with that group of players that was coming in the game. I think him and Jethro both a little bit. They would come in at the end of games with the walk-ons, and you could immediately see it. Like, these two guys, they don't belong here. Like, they're actual players. And I think both of those guys can be really good somewhere else. And that's not to say that if Latrell Jassell stays here, he can't be good for KU, because I think he can be good. I think he was the best shooter on this team this year, as according to Bill Self. And I think he would come in just about every time he played, and he did make a three almost every time. He tried to prove it in the games as well. He may end up leaving the program. I think the two most likely things that are going to happen to clear that spot for Christian Bishop is going to be either Latrell Jassell leaves the program or Ochai Agbaji goes to the draft and stays. One of those two things is probably going to happen, because I don't really see KU extending that offer out to Bishop, making that effort, and then going and grabbing Yusufu to fill the spot. So I do think Christian Bishop ends up at Kansas somehow, whether that does end up being Latrell Jassell leaving or Ochai Agbaji going to the NBA draft. But I do think he ends up here. So we'll see how that all works out. I'm excited to watch it, though. This isn't something you see a lot from KU. You do see guys leave, but this many guys leaving and this many guys joining transfer-wise, I guess this is like the new wave of college basketball, the free agency, air quotes, kind of thing. We'll continue to see that, I think, as the years go past, but it's not something that I remember seeing a whole lot of, is this many guys leaving and this many guys coming in. That's something that I think will be new, that I think will be exciting to watch this team come together. I do think one thing signing Joseph Yusufu does tell me is that we're probably out of the running for TyTy Washington. I mean, I think a lot of that probably has to do with Jerrance Howard leaving the program. So Jerrance Howard is going to be Chris Beard's number 1 assistant. I think he was Bill Self's number 3. So he's going to be Chris Beard's number 1 assistant. He's a recruiting ace, so I think he's going to do well there. I wouldn't be surprised if TyTy Washington ends up there at Texas with him, because he was his main recruiter for here. So I think once he took that job at Texas, we were out of the running for TyTy at that point. Yeah, good luck to Coach Howard, though. Everybody that came through here seemed to love him. I did get a chance to meet him a couple of times while I went to KU. He seemed like a nice guy. Good luck to him. Good luck to him on Chris Beard's staff at Texas. He's going to be a recruiting ace. They're going to find a lot of talent out of that state. So hopefully it's not too much talent to where they're jumping over KU or anything like that. We have enough of that already with Baylor winning that national championship. So we don't need another Texas team trying to show us up as well, which I'll talk about that Baylor-Gonzaga game in episode 5, along with some other stuff. So people that are wanting to hear that, wanting to hear me talk about that, that's coming in the next episode here over the next couple of days. So I will cover that as well. Yeah, as far as KU basketball stories, I guess the other one's the lifetime contract for Bill Self. That's a big one. I'm not that surprised with it. I actually did say in episode 3.5, I did say I anticipated him sticking around with whatever the NCAA does come down with. And I just didn't see a coach that was ready to go. He's had a lot of opportunities to jump ship, to go to the NBA. A lot of other high-profile jobs have come up, but he stuck around. I anticipated him being here a while. I know a lot of people aren't really happy with the full scope of what he's done since he's been at KU. I don't think any KU fans probably 100% happy for that. But how much better can you get? There's probably only a handful of schools, 5 at the most, I would say, that can say that they're more happy with what their coach has done for their program in as long of a span as Bill Self has been at KU, that they're happy with. Bill Self should probably have 1 or 2 more national championships. He should probably have a few more Final Fours. We all know that, but we also all know that the NCAA tournament is a crapshoot. We know that too. And then the dominance that he has displayed in the Big 12, that shows a lot more consistency. And I think that's a lot more about coaching prowess, in my opinion. Of course, there are certain coaches that can translate that prowess to win or go home games 6 times in a row. But you also have those situations where sometimes that coaching prowess comes out a lot more in a longer season where you play 20 games against other teams and coming out on top of that so many years in a row, especially with it being one of the better conferences in the country. And a lot of people will try to discredit that. But look at Baylor that just won a national championship. That team was in the Big 12 last year, the Big 12 that KU won, by the way. That same Baylor team, they pretty much got everybody back. That team was in the Big 12 last year. That team was a title contender last year. Both them and KU probably would have been 1 seeds last year. And that team just won a national championship. The last national championship game in 2019 also had a Big 12 team in it, Texas Tech. And that was in a tougher year for KU basketball. KU didn't win the Big 12 title that year. But that still just shows you how good the Big 12 has been when you see those teams at the top of the game. I'm not taking anything away from Coach Self in that regard. I would love to have more national titles, especially now with Baylor being the more recent title winner out of the Big 12. You just don't want that for recruiting. And then also, since KU's a blue blood, I think that's something that KU wants to take back. I'd imagine Duke and Carolina feel the same way out in the ACC, with Virginia kind of being the most recent title winner. And you can't really control that, but you can try to go and win. I think it seems like Bill Self seems a little bit more motivated to win around this time around, with how much he's been going after these transfers and going after these younger guys that are still out there. So he seems ready to take that step again and be a national title contender, which I think this team was just a season ago. I don't really see a reason why that team last year couldn't have made it to the Final Four at least. Of course, KU does have a history of losing in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, and sometimes even in the round of 32. That's not to say that it wouldn't have been possible for that team to lose, but the way that they played defense, it wouldn't have really mattered if they weren't scoring in a game. And I think that's one of the things that really ends up being the downfall of a lot of KU teams, is that they just don't score enough, and then the other team goes crazy from three. But last year you had defensive aces all over the place. You just don't really know what would have happened. But I don't think we really would have been able to go out and find a better coach than Bill Self at any point during the rest of his tenure here. He's going to be one of the best coaches in the country. So you either lock him up or you start over again with another guy, and then they got to come into a situation where you don't really know what's going on with the NCAA. You're going to lose guys out of the program that wanted to play for Coach Self, and then you're going to have to recruit and find other guys who want to come play for Kansas, also under a situation where they don't know if they're going to be able to play in the postseason. They don't know if their wins are going to count. So there's a lot of things that I think will work against going to get another coach. I think this was the move that should have been made. I have no issue with it. I'm excited to have Coach Self around for a long time. I think he will win another national championship. That's probably the fan in me talking. But I do think that's a great possibility that he ends up winning another national title here. At least one more. I think one more would solidify him as probably the best coach in the history of the program. You get another one of those, you get a few more Final Fours. I don't see any reason why not. So we'll see how that all works out as the NCAA transitions into more like the NBA with this whole free agency thing and all of that. But I think KU's adjusting well. And then one other thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is going back to Coach Howard leaving, which I did want to say good luck to him. But filling that spot, the first name that came to mind was Danny Manning. I would love to see Danny Manning come back to the KU program. He worked wonders on KU's big man. They would come here a certain player, and they would leave here 2 or 3 times the player that they were when they got here. We just haven't seen that type of development. Even if you think back to that Dedrick Lawson year, I think that was 2019. The Dedrick Lawson season. Dedrick Lawson was here for technically 2 years, but he only played for 1, and he never really changed as a player. I think with a Danny Manning coach here for Dedrick Lawson, I think he would have been even better as an interior player. I think that kind of hurt that KU team because he likes to play perimeter a lot. He likes to play face-up a lot, and that wasn't really what Bill Self wanted from him. And with the guys like Dotson, who needs to find those driving lanes and would benefit from a seal from a bigger guy, or even Quentin Grimes, who is continuing to prove he has superior shooting ability. He was also on that team as well. So a team like that, you would have benefited from a guy like David McCormick instead of Lawson. But that's not to take anything away from Lawson. He was awesome that season. I just think Danny Manning would have had him even better. And then a guy like McCormick now, with McCormick going into his senior year next year, it'll be technically his senior year. He'll be here for his 4th year, but he'll still be a junior because of the whole COVID thing. But either way, I think he would just be so much better. Like, he reminds me a lot of a Thomas Robinson type of player. Like, when Thomas Robinson first got here, he couldn't even see the floor. By his junior year, he was basically the runner-up for National Player of the Year. And I think we could have seen an ascent like that for David McCormick, especially with the progression we saw from him just in this one season. If you think about him playing under Danny Manning for 3 years, by this point, he probably would have been the Big 12 Player of the Year last year. I think he would have been that good. I know that Danny Manning probably could go get a pro job. He's on TV now, but he could go get a pro assistant coaching job. There's probably some smaller schools that he could go be a head coach at. But if there's any chance KU can get him back, I would love to see Coach Self take that chance. I really don't remember another coach having an impact on a skill, on a certain position on the court like Danny Manning had for those years. He was coaching KU's bigs. He did wonders for them. He did wonders for the program by developing them. If you think about the guys Danny Manning coached and developed here, he had all kind of first-round draft picks. And then other guys that played in the NBA as well, guys like Darrell Arthur, Cole Aldrich, both the Morris twins, Thomas Robinson, Jeff Withey. These are guys who had really good pro careers. These are guys who improved exponentially. And that's not even mention guys like Sasha Khan, who improved exponentially here in his time at KU as well. You think about those guys playing under him and the improvement that they made while they were at Kansas. It's just not something that you see a lot. None of those guys were one-and-done players either. They all took a little bit of time to develop. They didn't come here as guys who were surefire NBA players. They all played at KU for a while. They weren't coming in ready to go to the league. They all got here, developed, and you still have guys like Marcus and Markieff Morris who still are playing in the NBA right now. Just a really good run for him at KU. I would love to see him come back. Of course, if he doesn't come back, we understand he's got a lot of other opportunities out there, and Coach Self may not even go and pursue that because he may know that already, but I'd love to see him back here in the program in some capacity anyway. So we'll see how that all works out as far as that's concerned. And outside of that, I don't really have anything else I wanted to address in this episode. I'm going to go ahead and call it an episode. Again, I want to thank everybody for continuing to listen, continuing to support. It's very much appreciated. It's very much noticed. Don't forget, Instagram page, SA Sports _podcast. I'll post up a post with this with a question. So go out there, answer the question, like the post, share it. I'll put a story up, add it to your story or add my post to your story. And then just continue to support. Keep listening on all the platforms. This is the episode 4.5. So we've got a decent amount of episodes going now for episodes that you guys may not have heard. There are still some out there. Don't hesitate to go listen to those. I'll put this one up on YouTube as well. So just keep checking for everything. And then other inquiries, people who if you want to join on the show or have a guest segment, if you have questions, reach out to the email address, sasports913@gmail.com. I'll be happy to fill inquiries in the email as well. I'm excited to just continue to keep this going. I appreciate the continued support. And until next time.